The great chamber was silent. Una Park stood alone in the center of a circular room so large that her voice echoed 3 times before fading into nothing. Above her, 12 platforms floated at different heights, each holding representatives of the elder races who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, 30 years. Humanity had been part of galactic civilization for 30 years now. They had sent their best doctors to heal alien diseases. They had shared their engineers to build bridges between stars. They had offered their soldiers to keep peace in places where ancient hatred still burned hot and still. After all this time, humans remained nothing more than guests. Una was 52 years old. She had spent 20 of those years as a diplomat, learning alien languages, studying alien customs, and smiling politely when alien officials looked at her like she was a child pretending to sit at the adult table. Today was supposed to be different. Today, she had come to request full membership in the Galactic Council. High Counselor Dren looked down at her from the highest platform. He was Valerie, an insectoid creature with 4 arms and eyes that reflected no warmth. His species had founded the Council 8,000 years ago, and they had never let anyone forget it. The petition from the human species has been reviewed, Dren announced. His voice was flat and cold, like metal scraping against stone. The Council has reached a decision. Una kept her hands folded in front of her. She had learned long ago not to show emotion in this room. These beings respected control. They saw human feelings as weakness. Humanity's contributions to the galactic community are noted, Dren continued. Your medical research has been adequate. Your engineering solutions have been acceptable. Your peacekeeping forces have been functional. Adequate. Acceptable. Functional. Una felt something cold settle in her chest. She knew those words. They were the words the Council used when they wanted to say something was worthless without actually saying it. However, Dren said, and that single word crushed whatever small hope Una had been holding. The Council finds that humanity remains too young, too emotionally unstable, and too primitive in their social development to warrant full membership status. A murmur passed through the other platforms. Counselor Marek of the Torith, an amphibian creature covered in blue-green scales, nodded his large head in agreement. General Vorak of the Koran, a bird-like being with sharp eyes and sharper talons, simply looked bored. Humanity will retain its current status as a provisional species, Dren concluded. This petition is denied. The matter is closed. Matter's closed. Una had heard those words before. 5 years ago, when humanity had requested trading rights equal to other species. 10 years ago when they had asked for representation in Council security meetings. 15 years ago when they had simply wanted their colonies to be protected under Council law. Every time, the same answer. The matter is closed. She bowed her head slightly, the proper gesture of acknowledgement. The human delegation thanks the Council for its consideration, she said. Her voice did not shake. Her face did not change. She had learned to hide her heart behind walls of ice. The walk back to the human embassy took 20 minutes through gleaming corridors of white and gold. Alien species passed her without a glance. To them, she was invisible, unimportant, a representative of a species that did not matter. The embassy was a small building compared to the grand structures around it. Inside, 2 people waited for her in the main conference room. Admiral Taiho Shin stood by the window, his gray uniform perfectly pressed, his posture straight as a blade. He was 60 years old, and he had commanded humanity's space fleet for the past 15 years. His face was calm, but his eyes were tired. So very tired. Dr. Hannah Kwan sat at the table, her fingers wrapped around a cup of cold tea. She was the chief scientist of humanity's Galactic Research Division, responsible for the medical breakthroughs that had saved millions of alien lives. She looked up when Una entered, and her expression said she already knew the answer. They refused, Una said simply. She sat down heavily in a chair. Again, Taiho did not turn from the window. What reason did they give this time? The usual. We are too young, too emotional, too primitive. Una laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Our contributions are adequate, acceptable, functional. Hannah set down her cup. My team cured the Venthon fever last year. That disease killed 200 million Torith over the past century. Our cure saved their entire southern continent. It's functional, Una repeated. My peacekeepers have held the Koran-Valari border for 12 years, Taiho added quietly. Both sides wanted war. We gave them peace. They called us weak for not choosing a side. Adequate, Una said. Silence filled the room. Outside the window, alien ships flew past in perfect formations, carrying beings who would never see humans as equals. Who would never even try, Hannah spoke first. What do we do now? Una looked at her hands. They were older now, lined with years of work and worry. She thought about all the young humans who had come to the stars with hope in their hearts. She thought about the children born in space, who had never known Earth, who had grown up being told they were less than everyone around them. I am tired, Una said softly. I am tired of asking for respect from people who have already decided we deserve none. I am tired of proving ourselves to judges who will never change their verdict. Taiho finally turned from the window. His eyes met hers, and in them, she saw the same exhaustion, the same quiet pain that had built up over 30 years. Then, perhaps, he said slowly, it is time we stop asking. The words hung in the air like a held breath. Hannah frowned. What are you suggesting? Taiho walked to the table and placed both hands flat on its surface. We have given everything to this galaxy. Our knowledge, our labor, our blood. And in return, we have received nothing but polite contempt. He paused. What if we simply stopped giving? They would barely notice, Hannah said bitterly. Perhaps. Taiho nodded. Or perhaps they have forgotten what our contributions actually mean. Perhaps they need to be reminded. Una studied his face. You are talking about withdrawal. Complete withdrawal. I am talking about going home. Taiho straightened. I am talking about closing our borders, recalling our people, and letting the galaxy see what it looks like without us. That could take years, Hannah said, as Taiho agreed. It must be done quietly, slowly, without anger or threats. We simply ... leave. Una thought about the council chamber. She thought about Dren's cold eyes and his colder words. She thought about 30 years of hoping, of trying, believing that one day things would be different. The hope was gone now. It had died quietly in that great chamber, killed by a single word. Denied. Send the message to Earth, Una said. Her voice was calm, steady. Final. Tell them to begin Project Homeward. That night, a coded transmission traveled across the stars to humanity's homeworld. It contained no threats, no demands, no anger, just 2 words. We're coming home. And somewhere in the Galactic Council station, High Counselor Dren slept peacefully, unaware that he had just made the greatest mistake in the history of his species. The withdrawal began so quietly that nobody noticed at first. Lieutenant Wujin Beek had run the human medical station on Torth Prime for 15 years. He had arrived as a young man with bright eyes and a heart full of purpose. Now his hair was gray at the temples, and his hands, though still steady, carried the weight of countless lives saved and lost. The station was small compared to the massive Torath hospitals nearby, but sick aliens came from across the sector to seek human treatment. There was something about the way humans practiced medicine. They did not just treat diseases. They treated patients. They listened. They cared. And somehow, that made their cures work better. On a cold morning in the Torath calendar, Wujin received the orders he had been expecting. Project Homeward. Time to go. He did not argue. He did not complain. He simply began packing. His assistant, a young human woman named Somi Han, watched him with confused eyes. Sir, what are you doing? We have patients scheduled for the entire month. To transfer them to the Torath Central Hospital, Wudin said calmly. He placed his medical instruments into a case, one by one. Each tool had a story. Each tool had saved lives. But they came here specifically for human treatment. The Torath doctors don't use our methods. Then the Torath doctors will have to learn. Wujin closed the case and looked at his assistant. We are going home, Somi, all of us. The news spread through the station quickly. The human staff, 12 in total, began their own preparations. They moved efficiently, without drama, without tears. They had all known this day might come. Some had been hoping for it. A Torith official arrived the next day, his blue-green scales shimmering with irritation. "What is the meaning of this? You cannot simply close your station." Eugene faced him politely. "We are not closing it. We are transferring operations to local authorities. All patient records have been translated and shared. All equipment that was donated will remain. The station will continue to function. But without human doctors." "Yes." Eugene nodded. "Without human doctors," the official sputtered. "This is unacceptable. I will report this to the council. You are welcome to do so." Eugene returned to his packing. "The council knows of our departure." They did not object. This was true. High Counselor Dren had received the notification of humanity's withdrawal and had simply filed it away without comment. Good riddance, he had thought. Let them sulk in their corner of the galaxy. They would come crawling back eventually, across the stars. Similar scenes played out on 100 worlds. Dr. Minji Song had led the Xenobiology Research Center on Kareth 7 for nearly 20 years. Her work had identified 3 potential pandemic diseases before they could spread, saving hundreds of millions of lives across multiple species. When she received the withdrawal order, she felt something she had not expected. Relief. She had spent 2 decades being brilliant, being essential, being ignored. Her research papers were read, but rarely credited. Her warnings were heeded, but never acknowledged. She had grown tired of being humanity's invisible hero. What about the current projects? Her colleague Jung Ho Kung asked. Archive everything. Encrypt it with human protocols. Mingy began shutting down her laboratory systems. If they want our research in the future, they can ask nicely. If they don't ask, Minji smiled thinly, then they can figure it out themselves. The hardest departure was the peacekeeping withdrawal. Captain Jiho-Ru had commanded the human peacekeeping battalion on the Koran-Velari border for 12 years. The 2 species had ancient hatreds that went back thousands of years. They had fought dozens of wars. They had killed billions of each other. And then humans had arrived and done something no one else had managed. They had kept the peace, not by being stronger than either side, not by threatening violence, simply by being there, by being neutral, by being patient. Both the Koran and the Velari had mocked the human peacekeepers. The Koran called them cowards for refusing to fight. The Velari called them fools for not choosing the winning side. But secretly, both sides had come to depend on those quiet soldiers who stood between them. When Jiho received the withdrawal order, he called his officers together. "We leave in 3 months," he told them. "Full withdrawal. All personnel, all equipment, all support systems." Lieutenant Boyang Kim frowned. "Sir, if we leave, the ceasefire will collapse. Probably. They'll go back to war. Probably. Millions will die." Jiho was quiet for a long moment. "Yes," he said finally. "Millions will probably die. And that is a tragedy. But we have held this line for 12 years, Lieutenant. We have given everything we have. And in return, both sides have treated us like garbage beneath their feet." He looked at each of his officers in turn. "I am not asking you to enjoy this. I am not asking you to feel good about it. I am only asking you to understand that we cannot save people who refuse to value our sacrifice." The withdrawal was slow and careful. Gio made sure that both the Koran and Velari were fully informed. He provided transition plans, suggested neutral zones, offered advice on maintaining the peace without human presence. General Vorak of the Koran listened to the briefing with barely hidden contempt. "You are abandoning your post. We are returning home." Jiho corrected politely. "Same thing. Cowards run away." Giho smiled. It was not a happy smile. Perhaps. Or perhaps courage is knowing when to stop giving your heart to those who will never appreciate it. Vorak had no answer for that. Months passed. Human ships left alien ports. Human engineers shut down their workstations. Human teachers closed their schools. Human merchants emptied their shops. There were no protests. No demonstrations. No angry speeches or bitter accusations. Humanity simply folded itself up and left, like guests who had finally realized they were not welcome. Some aliens noticed. Most did not. The galaxy was vast, and humans were small. Their absence was a minor inconvenience at worst. High Counselor Dren received regular reports on the withdrawal. He read them with satisfaction. The humans were finally learning their place. They would spend a few years in isolation, realize they needed the Council more than the Council needed them, and return humbled and grateful. He was so certain of this that he did not bother to read the final report carefully. If he had, he might have noticed something strange. The humans had not left in anger. They had not left with threats or promises of revenge. They had simply left, and they had taken everything with them. Every piece of unique human technology. Every medical formula that only humans understood. Every engineering solution that only humans could maintain. Every bit of knowledge that they had shared freely for 30 years. The galaxy had grown. Dependent on human contributions without ever realizing it. Like a body that does not notice its heartbeat until it stops. The last human. Ship to leave Council space was the diplomatic vessel carrying Ambassador Yuna. Park she stood on the observation deck as the ship crossed into human territory. Watching the stars that had been her home for so long, Admiral Taiho Shin stood beside her. Any regrets? Yuna thought about it. Many, she admitted, but not about leaving. Only about staying so long. Behind them, the borders of human space sealed shut. Not with weapons or threats, but with quiet dignity. A door closed softly. A message sent clearly. We are done. And in the great halls of the Galactic Council, no one noticed that the universe had just changed forever. The first sign of trouble came from Torith Prime. It started as a cough. Just a simple cough in a small fishing village on the southern continent. Within a week, the entire village was sick. Within a month, the disease had spread to 6 major cities. The Torith called it the Gray Breath. Victims coughed until their lungs filled with fluid. Their scales turned pale and cracked. Most died within 10 days of showing symptoms. Counselor Marek stood before the Torath Medical Council, his scales already showing the pale tinge of fear. What do our doctors say? They are working on it, the chief physician replied. But this disease is unlike anything in our records. The structure is complex. Our treatments are not working. What about the human medical databases? The ones they left behind. The physician hesitated. The databases are encrypted. We cannot access them without human assistance. Marek felt cold spread through his body. Then contact the humans. The message was sent to Earth's border. It was polite, professional, requesting immediate medical assistance for a humanitarian crisis. The response came 3 days later. 3 days during which another 50,000 Torath died. We acknowledge your message. We wish you well in addressing this challenge. Unfortunately, we are unable to provide assistance at this time. We hope you understand. Marek read the message 5 times, certain he was missing something. They refused? They simply refused? His assistant nodded grimly. They are no longer council members. They have no obligation to help us, but they are doctors. They took oaths to heal. They took oaths to heal those under their care. The assistant's voice was quiet. We are no longer under their care. We made that very clear when we denied them membership. The Gray Breath killed 3 million Torith before their scientists finally developed a partial treatment. The full cure took another 2 years. By then, entire regions had been devastated. But the plague was only the beginning. On the Cornvalari border, peace held for exactly 4 months after the human withdrawal. Then, a Coran patrol ship fired on a Velar trading vessel, claiming it had crossed into restricted space. The Velar responded with force. The Coran responded with more force. Within a week, the border was a war zone. General Vorak led the Coran offensive with the same aggression that had defined his species for millennia. We should have done this years ago, he told his officers. Those human peacekeepers held us back. Now we can finally finish what we started. The first battle was a Coran victory. So was the second. By the third, Vorak was beginning to understand something terrible. The humans had not just kept the peace. They had managed the peace. They had handled logistics, communications, supply lines, and 1,000 small details that neither side had ever bothered to learn. Without them, both the Koran and Valeri militaries were struggling with basic operations. Worse, the humans had served as neutral mediators for every minor dispute. Now, every small incident escalated into a major conflict. There was no one to step between the two sides. No one to say, "Wait, let us talk about this." The war lasted 8 years. 18 billion died. Entire planets were rendered uninhabitable. Both species lost nearly a third of their populations, and throughout it all, Earth remained silent. The infrastructure failures were slower, but equally devastating. Across the galaxy, systems that had run perfectly for decades began to malfunction. Power grids flickered and died. Communication networks developed strange errors. Transportation hubs ground to a halt. The problem was always the same. Human engineers had built or modified these systems using techniques that no one else understood. Not because humans had kept secrets, but because no one had ever asked them to teach. Why would we? The alien engineers had thought. They are just primitives. Their methods are probably just luck now. Faced with failing systems they could not fix, those same engineers were forced to admit an uncomfortable truth. Human engineering was not luck. It was genius. A different kind of genius than the elder races practiced. But genius nonetheless. And it was gone in the great chamber of the Galactic Council. High Counselor Dren faced a room full of angry representatives. "The Torith are crippled by disease," Counselor Merrick shouted. 3 million dead. "The Koran-Valari War has destabilized the entire eastern sector," another counselor added. "Trade routes are collapsing. Our infrastructure is failing," a third voice joined. "We are facing system-wide breakdowns." Dren raised his forearms for silence. "These are unfortunate developments, but they are not connected to the human departure." "Not connected?" Merrick's voice was incredulous. "The humans ran our medical stations. They kept the border peace. They maintained our critical systems. And you say their leaving is not connected?" "The humans were a minor species," Dren insisted. "Their contributions were adequate at best." Junior Counselor Thalen of the Koran stood slowly. She was the youngest member of the council, appointed only 5 years ago. She had opposed the decision to deny human membership, and she had been quietly gathering evidence ever since. "With respect, High Counselor, you are wrong." The chamber fell silent. Challenging Dren directly was almost unheard of. Thalen activated a holographic display. Data filled the air above the council platforms. In the past 30 years, human medical research has directly saved an estimated 400 million lives across council space. Human engineering innovations have improved our infrastructure efficiency by approximately 18%. Human peacekeeping forces have prevented an estimated 12 major conflicts. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. More importantly, humans did all of this while being treated as second-class citizens. They did it while being denied basic rights. They did it while being told repeatedly that they were too primitive to deserve a place among us. "This is irrelevant," Dren snapped. "They chose to leave." "Yes, they did." Thalen's eyes were hard. "And why do you suppose that is?" "Could it possibly be because we gave them no reason to stay? Because we took everything they offered and gave nothing in return?" "They were too young. They were too patient," Thalen interrupted. "They waited 30 years for us to see their worth. 30 years of service, of sacrifice, of hope, and we exhausted that patience with our arrogance and our contempt." Rex spoke up, his voice tired and sad. "She is right, Dren. I did not want to admit it before. I told myself that humans were emotional, irrational, temporary. But the truth is simpler. We needed them. And we refused to acknowledge it until they were gone." The chamber was silent. For the first time in his long career, Dren had nothing to say. Thalen deactivated the display. "I am not saying we should beg the humans to return. That would be pointless. They have closed their borders and made their position clear. Then what are you saying?" Dren asked. I'm saying we need to admit the truth. To ourselves, if no one else. We made a mistake. A terrible, arrogant, foolish mistake. And now we are paying the price for it. She looked around the chamber at the faces of beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. The question is not whether the humans will come back. The question is whether we can learn from this. Whether we can become the kind of civilization that would never make this mistake again? No one answered her. In the years that followed, the galaxy slowly stabilized. The Torith developed their own medical expertise. The Corrin-Valor War eventually ended in exhausted stalemate. New engineers learned to maintain the systems that humans had built, but things were never quite the same. And at the edge of Council space, Earth's borders remained closed, silent, patient, waiting for nothing at all. Inside the borders of human space, life was quiet, peaceful, free. Director Young Ji Lim stood on the observation platform of Lunar Base 7, watching Earth rise over the gray horizon of the moon. She had been born in space, raised in space, and had spent most of her adult life working in space. But the sight of that blue-green world still took her breath away. 30 years ago, humans had gone to the stars with dreams of friendship and cooperation. They had found neither. What they had found instead was a galaxy full of ancient species who looked at humanity like adults looking at children playing with toys they did not understand. Now, humanity had come home. And surprisingly, home felt good. The colonies were thriving. Without the burden of serving alien masters who did not appreciate them, human scientists were free to pursue their own research. Human engineers were building wonders for their own people. Human doctors were healing their own communities. It was not isolation, exactly. Humans still traded with species outside Council space. They still welcomed visitors who came with respect and genuine interest. They simply no longer participated in a system that had been designed to keep them in their place. Young Ji's assistant, a young man named Minho Park, approached with a tablet. Director, we have another request at the border. Council delegation? Yes. Third one this month, Yoonji sighed. It had been 7 years since the withdrawal. The council had been sending increasingly frequent messages requesting dialogue. The tone had shifted over time, from demanding to asking to almost pleading. Same response as always, Young Ji said. We appreciate their interest. We wish them well. We prefer to remain focused on our own development at this time. They will not be happy. No, but happiness was never part of our arrangement with the council. Yoonji turned back to the window. Send the response, and make sure it is polite. We have no reason to be cruel. That was the thing about humanity's withdrawal. It had not been born of anger or hatred. It had been born of exhaustion. Finally accepting that some relationships cannot be fixed no matter how hard you try. On Earth, former Ambassador Yuna Park had found peace in an unexpected place. She lived in a small house in the Korean countryside, surrounded by mountains and forests and the sounds of nature that had soothed human souls for thousands of years. Her garden was her pride now, rows of vegetables and flowers that she tended with the same care she had once given to diplomatic negotiations. Admiral Taeho Shin visited her once a month. He was retired now too, his duties passed to younger officers. His hair had gone completely white, but his eyes were still sharp, still watching the horizon for threats that might never come. Another delegation was turned away yesterday, he told her as they sat on her porch. Drinking tea and watching the sunset, I heard. Yuna did not look away from the mountains. They are persistent. They are desperate. Taeho shook his head. The reports from Council Space are not good. Their economy is struggling. Their alliances are fragile. They need help, and they think we will provide it. They hope we will. Yuna was silent for a long moment. Do you remember the day they denied our membership petition? I remember. I stood in that chamber and listened to Dren tell me that we were primitive, inadequate, unworthy. She finally turned to look at her old friend. I had given 20 years of my life to building bridges with those species, and in that moment, I realized that the bridges had always been one way. We walked across to help them. They never bothered to walk across to understand us. So we burned the bridges. No. Yuna shook her head firmly. We did not burn anything. We simply stopped walking. There is a difference. The tea grew cold as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Somewhere in the distance, birds sang their evening songs. Do you regret it? Taiho asked finally. Yuna considered the question carefully. I regret that it was necessary. I regret the 30 years we spent hoping for something that was never going to happen. But the decision itself? No, I do not regret that. News of a different kind came from the border a few months later. A small Koran vessel had arrived, carrying a single passenger. Not a diplomat or a spy. Just a young woman who had resigned from the Galactic Council and was requesting asylum. Her name was Tha Lin. The request created considerable debate among human authorities. Allowing a former council member into human space could set a dangerous precedent. It could be seen as a propaganda victory for the council. It could be a trap of some kind, but Thalin's request was not for political asylum. She did not want protection or special treatment. She simply wanted to understand, after much discussion. She was granted limited access to an orbital station above Earth. She would not be allowed to visit the planet itself, but she could speak with humans, observe their society from afar. The person assigned to meet with her was a young historian named Do-En Chai. He was 32 years old. Born after the first contact with alien species, but before the Great Withdrawal, he had spent his career studying humanity's brief and complicated relationship with the Galactic Council. Thalin was younger than he had expected. Koran were difficult to age by human standards, but something in her eyes suggested youth combined with hard experience. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, she said. Her voice was careful, respectful. Do-En nodded politely. You came a long way. It seemed rude not to at least say hello. They sat in a small observation lounge, Earth visible through the wide windows. Thalin stared at the blue world with undisguised wonder. It's beautiful, she said. I understand now why your people wanted to protect it. We wanted to share it, Do-En corrected gently. We came to the stars hoping to make friends, to learn and teach and grow together, but that is not what happened. Thalin looked away from the window. No, it is not. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Thalin asked the question that had brought her across the galaxy. Why did you not fight? Your species had weapons, technology, resources. When the Council denied you respect, why did you not demand it by force? Do-En smiled sadly. That question tells me you still do not understand humans. Then help me understand. He stood and walked to the window, looking down at the world that had given birth to his species. On Earth, we have a long history of conflict. We fought each other for thousands of years over territory, resources, beliefs. We learned every lesson that violence has to teach. And what did you learn? That forcing someone to respect you earns you nothing but resentment. That conquering a people does not conquer their hearts. That true respect, the kind that lasts, cannot be taken. It can only be freely given. Thalin processed this. So you walked away. We walked away. Do-En turned to face her. Not to punish the Council, not to teach them a lesson, simply because staying was destroying us slowly. We were giving everything we had to beings who saw us as tools at best and pests at worst. Eventually, we had to choose between our dignity and our usefulness. We chose dignity. And if the Council apologizes, if they admit they were wrong, Do-En returned to his seat. That would be welcomed. But it would not change our decision. We did not leave because we were waiting for an apology. We left because we needed to leave. Whether the Council ever understands that is up to them. Thalin was quiet for a long time. Her avian features unreadable. Resigned from the Council because I could not be part of something so blind to its own failures, she finally said. I thought perhaps if I came here, I could find a way to build a new bridge. A better one. Perhaps you can, Do-En said. But bridges require to builders. Humanity has made our position clear. We are not hiding. We are not plotting revenge. We are simply living our lives without the burden of seeking approval from those who will never grant it. He gestured toward the window, toward the planet below. Our door is not locked. It is simply closed. And we have stopped waiting by it. Thalin looked at Earth one more time. She thought about her species and all the other species who had built a civilization on the assumption that their way was the only way that mattered, and she began to understand just how much they had lost. 12 years had passed since humanity closed its borders. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. High Counselor Dren was dead, assassinated by a radical Valari faction that blamed him for the catastrophic failures of the past decade. The Corran-Valar War had finally ended, not in victory for either side, but in mutual exhaustion. 18 billion dead. Countless worlds ruined. And for what? For nothing at all. The Torath had rebuilt their medical systems, but scars of the Grey Breath Plague remained. A third of their population had been lost before they learned to save themselves. They would never forget what that lesson had cost. 3 elder species had collapsed economically. Their ancient wealth burned away in failed attempts to maintain systems they had never bothered to understand. The Galactic Council that had once ruled 1,000 worlds now struggled to coordinate 100. And through it all, Earth remained silent. The new High Counselor was a Valari named Sarith. She was younger than Dren had been, and wiser in the particular way that comes from watching an empire crumble. She had seen the reports, studied the data, and understood the truth that her predecessor had refused to accept. Humanity had not been a minor species. They had been the glue holding the galaxy together. Councillor. Thalen had returned to Council space after her time among the humans. She had not come back to rejoin the government. She had come back to change it. For 5 years, she had worked tirelessly, building coalitions, gathering support, pushing for what she called the acknowledgement. It was not popular. Many Council species still blamed humanity for the disasters of the past decade. If the humans had stayed, they argued, none of this would have happened. Thalen's response was always the same. If we had treated them with basic dignity, they would never have left. The fault is ours, and until we admit that, we cannot begin to heal. Today, finally, the Council had agreed to vote on the acknowledgement. The Great Chamber was quieter than it had once been. Fewer platforms floated above the central floor. Fewer species had representatives. The room that had once echoed with the confidence of a galactic civilization now felt hollow and sad. Sarith stood on the highest platform. Her wings folded tight against her body in a gesture of formality. "We are here to address a matter that has been avoided for too long," she began. 12 years ago, humanity withdrew from galactic society. They left quietly, without threats or demands. And in their absence, we have been forced to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. She paused, looking around the chamber at the faces of beings who had once thought themselves masters of the universe. Counselor Thalen will speak first. Thalen rose from her platform. She was older now, her feathers touched with gray, but her voice was strong. "I've spent the last 5 years asking one question. How did we fail so completely to see what humanity offered us? The answer, I have learned, is both simple and shameful. We did not fail to see it. We simply did not want to see it." She activated a holographic display, similar to the one she had used years ago when confronting Dren. Humans were different from us. They were emotional when we prized logic. They were compassionate when we valued efficiency. They solved problems in ways we did not understand and could not replicate. And instead of appreciating those differences, we dismissed them. We called humans primitive because they were not like us. We called them inadequate because they did not fit our definitions of success. The data scrolled past, a reminder of everything humanity had contributed and everything the Council had lost. "We were wrong," Thalen said simply. "Not slightly wrong or partially wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong. And we need to say that out loud." Counselor Marek of the Torith spoke next. His scales had faded with age and his voice was heavy with regret. "I watched 3 million of my people die from a disease that human doctors could have cured in days. I blamed the humans for abandoning us. It took me years to understand that we had abandoned them first. Every day, for 30 years, we told them they did not matter. We should not be surprised that they finally believed us." Other counselors spoke. Some defended the old ways. Some blamed humanity for overreacting. But most, for the first time, admitted the truth. They had failed. And they were sorry. Finally, Sareth activated a communication channel to Earth's border. The request for connection was sent. For several minutes, the chamber waited in tense silence. Then a human face appeared on the display screen. A woman with calm eyes and silver-streaked hair. Ambassador Nari, the current representative of human interests at the border. "Hi, Counselor Nari," said politely. "This is unexpected. How may I help you?" Sareth's wings trembled slightly. Among the Volari, this was a gesture of deep humility, an acknowledgement of failure. "Ambassador Yoon, I speak today on behalf of the Galactic Council. We have debated and voted. The result was not unanimous, but the majority has agreed." She paused, gathering herself. "The Galactic Council formally and publicly acknowledges its grievous error in the treatment of humanity. During the 30 years of human participation in galactic affairs, that expression did not change, but her eyes seemed to soften slightly. Sareth continued, "We do not ask for your return. We have not earned that right. We do not ask for your help. We have not deserved that gift. We ask only this, that you know we understand now, that your silence taught us what our arrogance could not, that we are sorry." The chamber was absolutely still. 12 years of guilt and regret hung in the air like a physical weight. Nari was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "On behalf of humanity, I accept your acknowledgement, High Counselor. Earth bears no grudge against the Council or its member species. We wish you well. Will you return?" Talon asked, unable to stop herself. "Will you rejoin us?" Nari's smile was gentle but distant. "Perhaps one day, when the wound has healed, on both sides." She paused. "But today is not that day. And tomorrow probably is not either. Some things take time." The connection ended. The display went dark, and the Galactic Council was left alone with its regrets. On Earth, in a small house in the Korean countryside, 3 elderly humans watched the broadcast together. Unipark was 87 now. Her hands were wrinkled, her hair completely white. But her eyes were still sharp, still thoughtful, still carrying the weight of a lifetime spent trying to build bridges that others kept burning. Admiral Taiho Shin sat beside her, a blanket across his knees. Dr. Hannah Kwan was on her other side, a cup of tea growing cold in her hands. "They finally said it," Hannah whispered. "After all this time," Yuna nodded slowly. "Yes, they finally said it. Does it help?" Taiho asked. "Does it make things better?" Yuna thought about the question. She thought about 30 years of service and 30 years of rejection. She thought about the day they had left, the mixture of relief and sorrow that had filled her heart. She thought about all the young humans who had grown up in a galaxy that did not want them, and all the young humans now growing up on a world that loved them. "The apology is welcome," she said finally. "But it was never the point. We did not leave to punish them. We left because staying was killing us slowly. We left because we deserved better than what they were willing to give. So what was the point?" Hannah asked. Yuna smiled, the first real smile she had felt in years. "The point was learning that our worth does not depend on their approval. The point was choosing ourselves for once. The point was walking away." Taiho raised his teacup. His hand trembled slightly with age, but his voice was steady. "Two walking away. Two walking away," Yuna and Hannah echoed. Outside the window, the sun was setting over the mountains. Birds sang in the trees. Somewhere in the distance, children were laughing, playing games that had been played on this world for thousands of years, and above them, the stars shone silently. The same stars that humanity had once reached for with such hope. The same stars that had shown them the limits of alien acceptance. The same stars that now watched over a species that had learned the hardest lesson. The universe had to teach. Some wrongs cannot be fixed with force. Some respect cannot be demanded. Some doors, once closed, stay closed for a reason. But sometimes, if you are patient, if you are strong, if you are willing to walk away from those who do not value you, you find something more important than acceptance. You find yourself and in the quiet house on the mountainside. Three old friends finish their tea and watch the stars come out. At peace with the past and ready for whatever future might come. The galaxy could wait. Humanity was finally home.